Well, here we are, your writing mentor, Jim Parsons. It's midwinter in Australia, so I thought I'd show off in my Bula shirt from Fiji, purchased in Fiji many, many years ago. Fiji is a wonderful country, lovely people, and so many years ago we stayed at a place called the Badara Inn. Badara Inn, lovely people, wish I was there now. But I would imagine the place has gone broke because there have been no international flights to most holiday countries for many, many months. But if anyone from the Badara Inn is listening in, Bula, love you folk. All right, with that being said, let's get on with lesson 19 in my series, Write That Novel Now. Lesson 19, we're still talking dialogue. And this time we're going to look at dialogue punctuation. Could take a couple of lessons. Let's get the punctuation correct. Now you might be thinking, punctuation, okay, I'm not real good at it, but who cares? If I write a good enough book, I'll get an editor to do some editing of it, or at least a proofread, or if a publisher takes it, they'll have an editor to proofread it for me. Sit down. Let me give you some home truths about the publishing industry and self-publishing. Let me give you the bad news about publishing. Yes, let's talk publishing. Why not? You know, it always irks me when the first communication I get from a potential client or student doesn't say, Jim, can you help me write a great book? It says, Jim, how do I get published? Now, that's getting off on the wrong foot with me. If you recall the very first lesson that I put on YouTube, I said to people, if you're doing this course, you should be here because you absolutely love writing. You can't help yourself. You've got to write. And I said, if you're here because you want to get published, write a bestseller and make $1 million, go away. Right? And I still say that. But we're at lesson 19. If you've been here this long, you must have some interest in writing. So yes, let's talk publishing. And my dear friends, the news is not good. There's all sorts of publishing, from traditional publisher through a range of some sort of publishers to self-publishing. Let's talk about traditional publishers, because they're the ones we're all desperate to be picked up by. To have one of the great publishing houses like Penguin or HarperCollins, Allen & Unwin or Simon & Schuster pick up your novel, it's like being presented with a medal. It's an accolade. It does mean you've made the grade, doesn't it? And not only that, it means you will probably make some money. The lovely thing about the traditional publisher, they pay you for your book. They will usually pay some sort of an advance. It mightn't be much if you're an unknown author, but it will be something. And of course, they have this enormous machinery to pull into gear. They will put lots of money into promoting you as a new writer. There'll be cardboard cutouts of you, of the characters out of your book, they end up in physical bookstores. There'll be all sorts of promotional material and advertising. They'll have a publicist who will organise a tour for you, lots of different interviews, radio, TV interviews. They will do their best to make you a huge seller. Why? Because they are depending on you. They have gambled on you being successful. If you're not, if for some reason you're an absolute flop, they have wasted a lot of money. Now, the other thing that your traditional publisher should do is they will have your work edited, probably someone on their team who will edit your work, possibly even send bits back and say, look, we'd like you to change this. Sort of thing that I do as a mentor. Why do they do that? Because the book is going out under their brand name. If it's full of errors, it makes them look bad. So, of course, this is part of the deal. Of course, everybody would like to have their book taken up by a traditional publisher. Just quoting from Allen & Unwin, one of the top Australian publishers, they receive something like 1,000 fiction offerings every year. I don't know how many a year they publish. I'll bet it's not more than 20 or 30. Now, they open a manuscript by Jim Parsons. Do you think they're going to say, oh, let's give the poor old fella a go? And he hasn't had anything published for a while. Let's give him a go. No. Traditional publishers are not charitable institutes. Don't think because you're young and fresh and you've got some good ideas that this is something that they're going to acknowledge. Maybe they'd like to, but they can't, because their entire income for the year is riding on the backs of just a few authors. Many of these houses have staff to pay all year, have business premises they've got to pay. They can't afford to be the least bit generous. Now, let's say your book is good enough to get attention from one of their readers, and that reader brings it along to the editorial meeting. They're all gathered around the boardroom. What have we read this month? What are we going to publish this month? And so this lovely, friendly editor says, well, I like this manuscript. It's got this, it's got that, it's got fresh writing, unknown author, but I think this person's got a huge career ahead of them if we can book them. Everybody says, oh, good, okay, let's do that. And then across the room, another editor said, well, I've just been through James Patterson's 50th novel. It's pretty mediocre, but look, James Patterson has 50,000 fans. They're going to buy it, even if it's blank pages. They'll buy it on the name of the cover. Perfectly true. Now, which of those two manuscripts do you think is going to go forward to publication? The unknown, good as it might be, or James Patterson's 50th, right? Now, I'm picking on poor James Patterson. In fact, he's a good bloke. He's a great philanthropist. He's poured so much money into charitable things, and he's a great promoter of public libraries and traditional bookstores. So, salute to James Patterson. I'm sorry I used him as an example in this, but I hope I've made my point. Don't expect charity or a fair go from traditional publishers. So what's next? You don't want to self-publish, so you're going to go for one of these other ones that claim that they're traditional publishers. They might go under the title of indie publisher. I'm not going to give any names because there are countless publishing houses like this. And you'll send them your manuscript and they'll write back and say, we're very interested. This is a great little book. Right. Of course they're interested because you are going to pay them to publish it. Please be aware, don't get excited just because a publisher you've sent your manuscript to says, yes, we will publish you. It doesn't stand for very much. They're going to say, yeah, we'd love to. Now, we'd like you to contribute towards the cost of publication. $300, $600, $1,000. That's our basic package. Now, if you'd also like our promotional package, and we'll make sure you get in all the book review places and you'll appear on our website, right? That package is another $1,000. And, gee, we could improve this manuscript a bit. You know, it's got a few errors. It really needs editing. Now, we have editors available who will do this for you. It'll only cost you a couple of $1,000, all right? Please be wary of this. The urge to be in print is great in all of us, but keep your head screwed on. Don't think that some publisher loves you to death, and don't think it means you're going to sell many copies, even with a traditional publisher. Yep, we all know about the million sellers, but do you know the average published author with a traditional publisher can average something like $5,000, $10,000. Sounds good, but doesn't make much money. So please be wary of it. So let's move on to self-publishing. Millions of people self-publish. Forget what the statistics are. Something like a book a second every day gets churned out by Amazon, and they're never spotted. If you self-publish, you are selling to family and friends. And you can self-publish very cheaply through Amazon's own website. cost nothing. And basically, when you sell a book or you buy your own books to distribute or resell, then you pay them a portion of what you would see as the retail price. Sure, you can do it. If you are going to self-publish, or if you're trying to appeal to a traditional publisher, common sense says you want your manuscript to be, if not perfect, very close to it. It shouldn't be full of glaring errors. And I'll tell you what, just go on Amazon and look at some of the self-published books. You can read pages online without buying them, and you will find some of them are absolutely appalling. Not just in the writing style, but in the poor punctuation, grammar, and spelling. So it is important, if you've got some self-respect, that you would like your book to go out there looking good. So should you get an editor? No. Let me show you editing rates. Now, I'm an editor. I am an editor. For quite a few years now, I've edited novels, and I also edit academic journals, academic essays for people all around the world. But oh my goodness, I don't recommend you do. And I'll show you why. Let's have a look at what it costs to have a book edited. Okay, let's look at the rates that you will pay for your manuscript for copy editing, or line editing as it's also called. I've chosen two manuscript sizes to illustrate my point. First is 80,000 words, and as most of you would know, that's about your standard ordinary old novel. You need to be getting about 70,000 words up at least to be able to call it a novel. And so 80,000 words is very much a standard manuscript size. If you're writing a fantasy or an historical saga, you could well find it's 100,000 words, 100,000 to 120,000. So let's look at what you'll pay for an 80,000 word document or a 100,000 word document. Now, I've taken figures from two websites. For the US figures, I've gone to the Editorial Freelance Association and got an average of what they say. And for Britain, I've gone to the Society of Editors and Proofreaders, who say that their rates are between 10 and 15 pounds per 1,000 words. So I've worked all that out for you here. Let's look at the US figures first. For an 80,000 word document, you're going to pay, on average, in the US, $1,440 US. For a 100,000 word document, you'll pay $1,800. In Britain, you'll pay for an 80,000 word document, on average, about £1,000, Great British pounds. Or 100,000 words, you're looking at £1,250. For Aussie figures, I have used my own rates because I am also an editor, apart from being a writing mentor. And I work under the business name Oz-Edit, Oz-Edit. When I went overseas last year, I took my website down because I didn't want work while I was traveling overseas. And hey, I enjoyed the freedom so much, I never put it back up again. I still get work coming in from old clients, and I always will help out someone that's one of my mentoring clients, but I don't do it regularly now. It's stultifying work, not the least bit creative. And so let me assure you, even when I'm quoting very low rates here, I'm not doing so to encourage you to send me your editing. I don't want it. I'm discouraging you from that. By all means, send me your mentoring. I love it. I love to help. I love the creativity that I'm involved with when I help someone create a story. Editing, yuck. Okay? But nevertheless, let me show you the rates that I'm still currently charging. So in Australian dollars, for an 80,000 word document, you're looking at 1,360, or for 100,000 words, you're looking at 1,700 Australian dollars. So an Australian looking for editing, anywhere you go, you can be pretty sure that's going to be the lowest rate you're going to get. So that'll give you a benchmark. My rates are low because I'm not a member of one of these prestigious bodies. I'm just working independently. I'm 74 years old. I'm retired. I'm not doing this as my income like so many other people are. So I'm not trying to buy a house, pay off a house. I'm not trying to raise kids. And so I can afford to do it dirt cheap. And it has made my editing more accessible to people that want it. Let me show you what I mean by dirt cheap. For example, $1,360 that I charge for 80,000 words, when you pull the exchange rate into it, that's only 968 US dollars, which, as you can see, compared with the average of 1440, represents a pretty big slab of a saving. Looking at 100 words, my 1,700 Australian dollars becomes 1,211 US dollars, which is a pretty fair saving on 1,800. The British 1,360 becomes 721 British pounds, which compares pretty favourably to the 1,000. And if you're looking at the 100,000 word manuscript, my 1,700 becomes 926 Great British pounds, which again compares pretty favourably with 1,250. What am I saying? Am I saying, come to me? No, I'm not. I'm saying you'd be an idiot if you pay even the prices that I'm charging, okay? Especially if you are intending to self-publish. When I come back to the main screen, I'll explain why in detail. Well, have I convinced you that getting your book edited is not such a smart idea? The rates might sound exorbitant, but believe me, editing, line editing, is a painstaking, mind-numbing game. It takes days. And then you go over it again to recheck. I've had people say, oh, I hope you enjoy my story. Fat chance you can't enjoy a story when you're looking at it word by word, right? You get excited if there's a comma in the right place. You get ecstatic if they've used a semicolon instead of a comma fault. That's about the only excitement you get out of editing. And I want to stress that this is not an ad for my editing. Do I want your work? No, I do not. When someone approaches me to do editing, first thing I do is send back to them and say, if you're self-publishing, are you aware that you are not likely to even recoup the cost of your publishing, whether it's $300, $600 or $1,000, depending on who's doing it? You're not even going to recoup that. You are never going to recoup whatever figure it is, $600 or $1,000 that you will spend with me in editing. Are you aware of this? I don't recommend it. That is my first email back, because I believe in being ethical. I don't believe in giving people false ideas. I do not want them to think that if I edit their work, wow, now they've got a bestseller on their hands and they're going to make $1 million. I could not live with myself if I did not stress to people, this is not a smart idea. If someone then comes back to me and says, well, look, I understand that, but I want this book for my kids and my grandkids and my friends, and I want it to look the best it possibly can. So I don't care what it costs. Okay, welcome. I will happily then edit that, but never will I edit a book without making that ISO first. So when I make it sound so hard, what do I recommend? Two things. If you want your manuscript to go to a traditional publisher, and that's the smart thing to do, if you think it's got merit, send it to a traditional publisher, explore that option, exhaust that option before you look at self-publishing. And so my recommendation is look at what the publisher's submission requirements are. If the publisher says send one chapter only, I will happily edit that chapter for you at a price, right? I will happily do that. If they say send the first 3 chapters, okay, costs more, but it's worth the effort to do that because that's what they're going to base their decision on. If they say, yeah, we like your work, send us the entire manuscript, I would just send it as is because they're already sort of hooked, okay? If you intend to self-publish, I really do not think you should be getting anyone to edit your work. It's as simple as that. And that is why I say you really need to put some effort into learning good punctuation. It's not that hard. Yes, it takes time. But let's put it this way. Even if you had to take a week off work and sit down and study a good book on punctuation, you probably saved money by not having the edit done. Does that make sense? There's lots of books out there. There's lots of stuff online. And in fact, I intend to do a YouTube series on punctuation. And that's what I recommend. Get in and learn the skills of punctuation. It'll save you a mountain of money. Okay? All right. Now, let's get back into punctuation. Let's do something about dialogue punctuation. Very well, we're going to talk about punctuating dialogue. Before we can really talk about punctuation marks that we use and how to use them correctly, we've got to start with the simple sentence, because all dialogue is sentences on a page and then we put punctuation around them. So just in case there are a few people out there unsure of some of these things I'm going to talk about, like finite verbs and all that sort of stuff, let's do a quick run through of sentences. In fact, there's a few things here that might surprise those of you who really think you've got a good handle on it. So let's have a look at this one. There are 4 types of sentences: a statement, the question, an exclamation, and a command. Here's a statement. Actually, I've never liked Harry. That's a very blunt statement. So how do we know it's a full, complete sentence? Because we really want to work with complete sentences, not fragments. Well, it's got a subject, which is I in this case. It could be John never liked Harry. It could be the boy never liked Harry. They're subjects. And of course, we have a finite verb. I won't go into that at the moment. Suffice to say, we have a verb. Have. I have is the core of this little sentence. Actually, I've never liked Harry. Other things that we have to do to make it a complete sentence: start with a capital letter, there it is, and finish with what we in Australia and Britain call a full stop, and what the Americans call a period. Okay, you might notice there's a comma after that first word, actually. There's a lot of words like this, introductory words that aren't required in the sentence really, like actually, really, however, noises like even phrases like for goodness sake. They all need to be cut off from the main part of the sentence with a comma. The question, okay, again, we have a subject. What do you think? We have a verb, think, and we have you as a subject. What do you think of him? And I'm sure you're very familiar with the question mark. So there is our complete sentence. Capital at the start, question mark at the end, nice little complete sentence. The exclamation. Again, I'm sure you're familiar with the exclamation mark. We start with a capital, we end with the exclamation mark. But hang on, if a complete sentence, if a real sentence has a subject and a verb, where the heck are they? Well, the verb's there, say, and the subject is implied. Someone has said it. So you could almost add, what a strange thing for someone to say. What a strange thing for you to say, implied there. And it's much the same with the command. Sit down and shut up. Well, plenty of verbs there, but where's the subject? The subject is again implied. The subject is you. And how do we know this? Well, if you get really mad, you'll add it. You sit down and shut up, right? So the subject is implied there to make it a complete sentence. Similarly, with all of these, you have capital letter at the start and the appropriate punctuation at the end. Notice the command uses an exclamation mark, the same as the exclamation. I want to start off this discussion of punctuating with the no tag dialogue. You remember we had dialogues with tags, we had dialogues with an action tag, and we had this other one, just the words and the quote marks on their own. No tag dialogue, piece of dialogue. It's the simplest dialogue you're ever going to have to make, and it's so easy to punctuate it. So it's a great starting point. Once you've got this one, you can build from it. So get this one down pat, okay? No tag dialogue. The words just stand on their own. Now, quote marks. Australian and English have the convention of using single quote marks. American English uses double quote marks. Now, if you ever get any of my books, you'll see that I favour the American double quote mark. I don't know why. I think because they stand out better, they're clearer. And in those very odd occasions when you have a quote within a quote, I think they look better. Here's an example. The double quote's on the outside, and then when you want to add something that someone else says in the middle, in this case, get lost. Did I hear you say get lost to your mother? That get lost requires a different form of quote mark because it's going to be very confusing if you've got 4 double quotes in a row. So we go to single quote. And I think that looks a heap better than single quotes in the main sentence and double quotes in the middle. But of course, it's just a convention, it's a choice. And if you've been used to that last line, then you'll say, looks fine to me. Okay. Let's have a look at putting the punctuation marks on these 4 different types of sentences. Statement, well, you can see the statement stands as it did before with a comma after actually, a full stop or a period after Harry. All we've had to do is put the quote marks front and back. Let's try it again with the double quotes. There they are. This is the question. Same thing. The words have not altered. The punctuation mark has not altered. That question mark is there as it always was. All we've done is pop quote marks either side of that existing piece of writing. In this case, I've used the American double quote. When it's an exclamation, same thing. There's the exclamation mark in place, capital letter in place, bang, bang, we've got our quote marks around. And as you can see, the command is the same. No difference, whatever. Now, have a look at that page. Rather messy, isn't it, with the single quotes, then double quotes, then single, then double. Which leads me to the basic rules. And the first basic rule is choose one style and stick to it. Very hard, and most people do. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is leave no space between the quote marks and the starting letter or the punctuation mark. This is wrong. See, I've left a gap there between the quote mark and the capital letter I. I've left a space between the full stop and the quote marks. That's wrong. Don't do it. And the other basic rule that you have to follow is that punctuation always goes inside the quote marks. So this is wrong. You see, I've got the period or full stop outside the closing quote mark. That's a wrong one. Now, this concept that the punctuation always goes inside the quote mark, it's even true with those quotes within quotes. Take a look at this beauty. I've used green highlighter to indicate the outer sentence, main sentence, which is a question. Did I hear you say? That's a question. And so it needs its own question mark. There it is, immediately inside the final quote mark. But look at the purple highlighters. Well, get lost is an order, so it needs an exclamation mark. There it is, tucked in right against get lost, and you notice it is inside its own single quote mark. So exclamation mark is inside its quote marks, and the question mark falls outside that, but inside the double quote. Hey, you want to see a really weird sentence? Look at this. 2 question marks in a row. Now you explain that. Take 5 seconds and see how you would explain that to someone else, just to get it straight in your own head. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a question inside a question. I hear you say, who cares? Well, not full stop, question mark. So you have a question mark inside the double quotes because that's the main sentence. And you have a question mark inside the single quotes because that's the who cares bit. Hope you can figure that out. It's not too difficult. If so, how about a self-test? Here are 4 completely bare sentences. Well, they're not really sentences yet, are they? Until we complete them. I want you to put the punctuation in, correct punctuation for each, and to put the quote marks in. You can choose double or single, whichever you like. Now, It's possible, I believe, to hit the pause button. So how about you hit the pause button and either scribble them out or do them in your head so that you've got your answers when you switch back on, because when I come back, I've got the answer sheet for you so you can mark your own work. We're back. Punctuating dialogue part 2. Have you done that self-test? There it is. If you want to stop the video now and do it, that's fine. Come right back, and here are the answers. Eat slowly is, of course, a command, and so it takes an exclamation mark. We get that in place, and then we simply put the quote marks on either side of the command. Okay, I'm using double quotes throughout here. The next one, can you swim, obviously is a question. So we get that question mark in, capital letter, and then simply put quote marks front and back. The third one is a statement. You'll find a dentist in Barker Street. Did anyone notice there was no capital on street in the test question? So I hope you remembered to put it in. Once we've established that it's just a statement and it only needs full stop, / period, then you can put your quote marks either side. And the last one, of course, how delightful is an exclamation. Exclamations take an exclamation mark. There it is, capital at the start. And when you've got the sentence correct, quote marks. Simple, so easy to do. Well, I think that's enough for lesson 19. I won't set any homework. I haven't got any sheets for you at the moment. I'd suggest you just try practicing those very basic sentence punctuation skills. Next week, I'll be looking at adding dialogue tags and all the different variation, and that requires a little more skill. And then I will tell you that I have some practice sheets that I can deliver to you if you want them, but not this week. We'll leave that till then. And so now it's goodbye. See you next week. Until then, keep safe.